Everyone, how are you doing? Okay, so today we're going to look at some lunging techniques and how you can lunge your horse for dressage. So here I'm showing you first how you can tie up your reins when you're lunging in a bridle. Um, so you can kind of twist them up and then you can put the throat latch through one part of it, and that way your reins aren't all in the way of the horse. And then one of the ways you can lunge is you can put the lead rope over the horse's head and hooked onto the bit. And you can see it's through the ring on the left side and hooked onto the ring on the right side over the top of the horse's head. So one of the reasons why you may want to do this is maybe your horse really has their head really high. This could help with a little pull pressure. Also, if the bit tends to, your horse tends to pull, and then the bit might come through their mouth. So you might want to have the lunge line through one side and attached to the other, and that'll help keep, if your horse pulls really hard, the bit from coming through their mouth. That can happen sometimes, unfortunately. Okay, and then the last thing that I have seen and I've never used in my life is you hook it underneath like that. So I've never felt that to be of any use to me, but I will show it because some people do that. Okay, so I'm gonna lunge her going to the right, and I just like to hook it onto her bit. She's pretty sensitive. I don't feel like I need to hook it through and over the top of her head. Here I'm getting my lunge line all organized. That's the hardest part for me anyway. All right, so right away, I'm going to look that I can feel her mouth as we're going and doing this. Once I get my lunge line organized, I'm going to take a bit of contact and hopefully the camera will follow me, which would be helpful. All right, there we go. Good. So here I'm kind of bringing her in a little bit so I can feel her mouth. There you see how the line is nice and tight. Again, not because I'm pulling hard, but I want to be able to feel her mouth. And you can see how she's bending her head and she's almost twisting her head to the left, even though she's supposed to be bending to the right. So right now I'm working on getting her head and neck to follow the same line of travel. So let's rewatch that section again. As she comes around, look at her head from her pole to her nose, and it looks like it's almost bending to the left, but she's supposed to be bending right. So I'm working on getting that kind of connection from her base of her neck to her pole and to her mouth to be a lot not straighter necessarily, but through her body. It feels like there's a kink right at her pole. And I'm kind of trying to feel it and see if I can work it out and say, hey, come through a little bit here. Not a girl. So I'll go on to the trot. And even here, I'm working on getting her to come through and not just bend her head one way. That's a little better. Yep. And then I send her away from me with the whip a little bit so that she's not falling in and that she can bend at her ribs and come around. Good. And here we canter. And same thing, that she can come around and I can send her away. If I walk towards her, she needs to keep the line and the contact consistent and the same, even though she's kind of tearing around there a little bit. Yep, that I can still feel her mouth and ask her to stretch down and be a little more honest in the contact. There we go. That's a little better. And onto the trot. I want the trot from the transition to be a little more connected. Yep, good girl. There's better. You can see she's stretched down, and now I'm letting her canter away from me a little bit and lengthen the line. And there I'm feeling her mouth saying, hey, yeah, that a girl. I want her to stretch and come through. Same thing as I would be doing when I'm riding her. And now as she's trotting, same thing. I want her to be suppling around. And even in the walk transition, that she's paying attention to my contact and staying honest to the contact. That whenever I touch her bit, that she looks to stretch down and not just turn her head right. And that's kind of what I'm working on here. And if she just turns her head right, I hold it because I don't want to release the pressure just because she turned her head right. There's better. I want her to stretch down. Yep. And then I ask her to halt. Good girl. All right. On to the next video. Let's see if I can. There we go. Is this it? Yep. Okay. So here, I'm going to be lunging her to the left. Um, and so one of the aids that I use to ask her to go forward or back is whenever I want her to keep the pace, is I point the lunge line kind of at her barrel. Um, and when I want her to go forward, I use my voice or whatever aid I use, and I point my lunge line at her tail. And when I want her to slow down, I'll put the lunge line in front of her shoulder. So I'll almost cross it across my lunge line. So here, as I'm walking her, I'm going to start picking up the contact and feeling the bridle, feeling where the bit is, because I want the connection with her mouth as I'm lunging her to be helping me how I will be riding her. I want her to get really soft. I want, even here, you can see she's kind of bending her head right, even though we're circling left. I want her to come through her whole pole. There is better. And then I soften, relax. So you can see then she gets even longer in her neck. There you go. Good. There, even she's still almost bending a little bit right. There's a little better. That I want her to stretch out her neck and really bend around. That's better. You can see then her whole top line moves a lot better. There's better. Good. So here I'm really working on at the walk, making sure her walk is nice and correct, really loose, and getting her to pay attention to the contact and really softening to it and getting nice and soft and over her back. Yeah, and this is a nice trot to start with. But I'm going to keep working on getting her to stretch, and that whenever I touch the bit, that she looks to stretch down. Not a girl. Yeah, nicely done. And then I'm going to send her away from me a little bit by, you can see I raised my whip and kind of sent the end of the whip at her and said, hey, move your ribs away from me. And this goes back to our work last week, where you saw that I really worked on getting her to pay attention to my body language and feel where my energy was sending her. So I don't want her to go faster. So the whip is pointed at her barrel. I want her to bend around her barrel more of the shape of a C so she can get more supple and loose. And that's kind of what I'm working on here. I like to stay in one spot so that she always knows where I'm going to be. But if I do walk, she should be paying attention and she should be able to walk with me. But overall, I like to stay in one spot. And then if I need to send her away from me with my whip, I might take a step towards her saying, hey, get away from me, move away. Like there, I took a little step towards her and swung the whip at her. Good. And then I'm doing it again, saying, hey, and you can see how much she kind of pushes out her shoulder a little bit better there. Yeah, that she's a little more better shaped. And then I asked her to canter. And canter this direction is a little bit better. Good. And I'm going to still work on finding a good contact with the mouth, even as we're cantering. And there I'm walking a little bit to encourage her to come away. Yep, good. That she bends around. And you can see she kind of broke to the trot, even though I didn't want her to. And just send her on calmly. Yep, she could have a little more jump now that I'm looking at it from this angle. Good. And you can see the bend is getting a little bit better. She's still kind of looking to the outside every once in a while. I would have liked her to be a little bending better throughout her whole body. Good. And again, here, I really want her to push away from me. Good. Yep, she was a good girl.